As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. We have an important returning guest today, Bill Murphy, one of the co-founders of GATA.org, the Gold Antitrust Action Committee. He's one of the good guys in that he and his GATA.org companions have been out investigating, exposing, and prosecuting manipulation and illegal action in the gold and silver markets. And we're just grateful to have Bill back again here on Reluctant Preppers. Bill, thanks for joining us.
Don, again, thanks for having me anytime.
We wanted to follow up with you. It's been several months since we had you on here. And in that time, we've seen, if we could start out with some recent market action in gold and silver markets, and then turn to some more overarching trends and principles that aren't just the daily action, but where we're headed. First of all, on recent gold and silver price action, we've seen two fairly dramatic breakout attempts by gold and silver over the past couple of quarters. They were strongly up in the last couple of quarters, and then both times dropped back down again. But seems to be a new signs of life than compared to what's been showing for some time previously. And Mike Maloney, for one, from goldsilver.com, is forecasting that we're in the middle of another further retest of a bottom in Q2 before a relaunch to new highs would happen after that. What do you see happening in the gold and silver markets that might give some people some insight from your research perspective?
Well, first of all, Mike's a very smart guy, so I always have to listen to what he has to say. But and clearly the gold cartel, as we call them, which is the bullion banks, the U.S. government, and other central banks, the BIS, they're still out there doing the same things they've been doing for 18 years, 28 years, whatever you want, and they're doing all they can to keep the prices of gold and silver going down. And every time we think that we hope they're going to let up, they come right back. And it's quite tedious, to put it mildly. I mean, obviously I'm bullish because we're at artificially low prices. They're ridiculous. Here to have $17 silver in 2017 and have gold to be going down 5.5 years, and $700 off its highs, and other assets are all making highs, and it's very frustrating. But that's what we do, and it's going to lead to historic markets on the upside, so it's a good reason for people to hang in there.
If we could turn our attention to aspects that may change in this game because of the new Trump administration. First of all, one of the main, you've been a vigilante in the sense of getting the word out there for years now on the actual realities and facts around manipulation and illegal price suppression and lack of enforcement by the COMEX and others. And so could you talk to us a little bit about, do you see the landscape changing as far as the enforcement that we will or will not, we can look forward to with the new administration to combat this price manipulation?
I doubt it. I haven't seen the thing change. As a matter of fact, if anything, it's getting worse in the sense that just months ago, transcripts were released of the Deutsche Bank suit, in which they were rigging the silver market and had to pay a whole lot of money, I don't know, $100 million. And they showed how the bullion banks talking to each other and how they were going to rip people off and when they were going to attack. And while this is going on, you've had major assaults on the silver market after this. I mean, we had it on March 2nd, in which silver was dropped to 80 cents for no apparent reason, and just ridiculous. And we just the other day, we had a breakout in silver. It closed well after the Fed speak and took off. People were quite surprised that gold and silver could move up with the Fed raising rates like that. There was a little panic coming in, and silver was getting ready to explode, and they took it right down, even though gold went up $9 on the day. So I don't see any change. You've got a bunch of Goldman Sachs people in with President Trump. They've been from way back in the very beginning. They were one of the main cogs in the gold cartel. I mean, they come and go. It's not like J.P. Morgan, which is there all the time now in the silver market. But, I'm hopeful, and if anybody can change things, quite frankly, it's President Trump. Uh, just from a simplistic standpoint, you know how much he likes gold, all those buildings and stuff like that. And there's talk about him having Andrew Jackson's picture rated the central bankers in his office, and the guy may want to change things and do it out of nowhere. So there is hope there more than any other president, but I want to see something versus just hope trading.
Yeah, you brought that up, and people have been very active in commenting on that, whether Trump is actually an outsider in this regard. He talked about in his campaign about draining the swamp, etc. But a lot of people have pointed to the specific appointees that he has named to his economic positions in his administration and saying, how are you going to drain the swamp if you're basically putting the old guard, more of the same would be expected if you're putting the old guard back in place again. What's your view about specific appointees, and what would you consider evidence of a change going to happen?
Well, first of all, I'd like to see the markets tell us that. In other words, and see the silver open interest is not far from the old all-time highs, and I'd like to see the bad guys get out. In other words, and not oppose price rallies. There's one other, a person around him, somebody named Judy Shelton, who's, very favorable towards gold and has some ideas that, she's presented in a paper. And, we hope that, may have some impact, and you don't know. And, President Trump may come to realize he's got a real big problem with the gold market. And if he doesn't get the scandal out of the way for what they've done, and, does the U.S. have any gold reserves left, or I'm sure we do, but how much of it, I don't know. I think they're diminished. And if the gold and silver markets are going to blow up at some point during his term, and his Goldman Sachs advisors know what's coming, he may want to get ahead of that, want to do something to alleviate that problem, and maybe elevate the gold price somehow, or do something that people aren't expecting, so that he can get a scandal behind him and maybe point to other presidents for having done it, and then try to come up with a solution. And I don't know, if they reset the gold price, for example, he could say, well, it's not going up because of his bad policies. It's going up because of some scandal, or because they want to do something to tie it to the financial system, and he can avoid a bullet on that one.
You mentioned gold reserves. Do you believe that it's likely that we will see an audit of the Fort Knox gold reserves called by President Trump? And how possible do you even think it is, if whether he does or not, if he were to call for an audit, that one can even be done?
Well, it's a very good question. There were rumors a while ago that he called one and they denied it, that there be one. He was denied. I have no idea whether that's true or not. If anybody is likely to call for an audit for the reasons I just mentioned, it would be President Trump. But it's you just never know. I mean, what else? What hasn't been audited since 1955? I mean, it's a joke. And as my colleague Chris Powell says, the United States would rather reveal our nuclear secrets than our gold secrets. It's that big a deal. It's that big a story. So I can't imagine them allowing a legitimate audit that gets into the, lease gold and stuff like that, and gold swaps, and what's the real story with U.S. gold reserves. But then again, President Trump's a different animal, and if anybody can do it, it's...
Yes, that's right. We've learned to expect the unexpected throughout the course of his campaign and early administration. A lot of people have surmised that the reason you can imagine why we haven't had a forthcoming Fed audit or a gold audit in specific here, is because there is no gold left. It's all been sold or leased or swapped away. Are there any other possibilities that you can think of strategically why our country has been so resistant or reluctant to be forthcoming about our gold reserves?
No, quite frankly, it's that simple. A lot of the gold has been compromised. They're certainly part of it. And as I mentioned, it'd be a huge scandal. And they just don't want to go there. And they don't know how to get out of it right now. So they keep, making sure there's no audit. And it's, as I said, it's ridiculous, but it just goes on and on and on. And one day, I'm sure that's going to be exposed. And as I've said many times, it's going to be the biggest financial scandal in U.S. history.
What do you think are some likely outcomes if, in fact, there is a revelation that we either have none or almost none of the national gold reserves than what people were thinking before? What do you think are how would that play out?
Well, I mean, first of all, the dollar would go into the tank, which Trump may like because it certainly would not, in one way, in the sense it would help the job picture, which he's trying to, facilitate in what he's doing. But obviously the gold price would just go bananas. And who knows, maybe the United States will have to declare a certain price of gold, pick a number, 2,500, 3,500, and say we'll buy gold at that price so that they can build the reserves back up. And they might do it surreptitiously and not tell people why they're doing it. But that's a possibility down the road. But again, I put that in my hope trade category.
People have talked about Trump favoring the possibility of a gold-backed currency. We've certainly had Ron Paul talking about that with federal chairmen for decades. Do you see any indication that the Trump administration would consider or favor a gold-backed currency?
Well, I'm not sure what all the details would be, but like I mentioned, if they came up with a reason for gold to go to a much higher price, for example, they can blame it on a technical issue and not because gold going up is bad, according to former Fed Chairman Paul Volcker. Gold going down is good. That's part of the reason the gold cartel operates the way they do. They want gold in the tank to not interfere with other issues regarding interest rates and the dollar and so on. But if it went up for a declared reason, the barometer would be dysfunctional in that regard. So it wouldn't mean that his policies are bad, for example. Just
right.
Well, here's, we want the gold price up here, so, and of course our camp would love to see it. And, my friend James Turk has said that if gold had kept up with inflation, it would be $3,300 an ounce. That takes out all the other issues. So even if we go back to 3,300, we're just getting gold to where it should be. And silver is truly a joke. It's not even at a price it got to in 1980 for whatever reason, in $50 or
right.
1/3 the price. So I think when they lose control of silver, which I think is going to be at $21 an ounce, I think silver will go bonkers.
We have a viewer question I'd like to share with you to see if you can have a response that would help us out here. Flame Tangu is the name of the viewer who submitted this. It says, who is really shorting the silver? According to the COT reports, banks are most likely long, not short. Why do we keep on hearing that those are the banks that are short? Well, it seems not to be true. Isn't it more logical that the one who needs physical would prefer the lower price? Maybe there's no manipulation in a way as we're being told to discourage silver stackers. Maybe those are just companies to hedge mining or producers that want cheaper physical. So can you talk to us a little bit about what we know about who is really shorting the silver and what their motivation would be?
Well, what GATA is going to say, because we've watched it, I look at it on a daily basis all day long, and you can see what they're doing. The open interest is, just a little below 190,000, and aside from last year, the high open interest was 192,000, and it's the same people. And I disagree with your questioner there that it's J.P. Morgan and it's the rest of the bullion banks. They're the ones basically shorting the market, and it's been this way forever. Ironically enough, when gold made its big move in 2011, the open interest was 130,000 contracts all the way up. We're a little below 190,000 now. J.P. Morgan and the bullion banks stepped aside during that move up. They let it go. And there's many theoretical reasons why that happened, and that's too much to get into. But they're there all the time, and it's their kryptonite. They're petrified of losing control of the silver market, because it's going to explode, and then gold's going to go with it, and then it's going to expose a lot of the things that they're doing. So the kind of action we've been seeing, this year in the last 5 or 6 years it's constant.
In most simplistic understandings of stock, bash and stash or pump and dump, that sort of thing, people who try to manipulate or start a trend, either a sell-off avalanche or a buy-up momentum, they're trying to start momentum in one way or the other and try to hope that by their action it will start a cascading effect to leverage that on the part of other buyers following suit, and then they'll be able to sweep in and either close out short positions at a far lower price or close out long positions at a far higher price. Do you see any evidence of that kind of profitable trading as a factor that's driving some of this manipulation? We keep hearing about how they're pushing it down, but is that just digging themselves deeper and deeper and deeper in a hole of greater and greater exposure, or do they in fact close out those positions at a profit?
Oh, profit indeed. I mean, look what happened after the Trump win. Everyone said gold would go up and the stock market would go down. But the plunge protection team at Gold Cartel came in and went bananas. And they've created a scenario that's lasted till this day, with the stock market going straight up. None of the mainstream people were bullish on the stock market if Trump won. I didn't hear one prior to the election. So they changed the whole perception by going into the futures market and driving the prices up. And it's, ongoing till this day. And gold and silver was the opposite. And they got the open interest in both gold and silver collapsed, which means, they were able to plunge the price down so much that the speculative longs and the people who are bullish all got out. And then that was in December, and then it rallied back up, and they're in the process now of trying the same thing again. And so they've been making profits from the short side for, 18 years that I've been doing this, and the same thing happens over and over again. I'm looking for something different. I don't know if it will happen, but where they just get out and then they don't oppose the rallies too much, or they do it in moderation according to whatever their new script is. And that's what we really want to see. And you never know when that's going to occur. In my opinion, they did what they did following the unexpected Trump win because they know they're going to have to inflate the system to save the system. And you're seeing that, of course, in other asset prices. And at the time, they were still very short gold, so they bombed it. And again, they got the speculators out, and I was hoping that would be it, but no, that went at it again. So we just have to see how it's going to play out.
So that's another aspect of the viewers' questions that focus on this idea of, do you see that these major bullion banks are short on paper, but are they accumulating physical so that they're positioning themselves for the long run that they would allow to happen later?
Well, there's some, talk about what J.P. Morgan's doing and their long physical position, which is, a different subject. Yeah, it's possible in some ways that could be being done. I don't know. I mean, we just know about J.P. Morgan. But one of the things that's going to should happen if the Goldman Sachs types and the other bullion banks and the big people know what's coming, the gold silver shares will just take off. I mean, if they know the game's up, they will move into that sector ahead of time, hopefully before anyone else. And maybe the latest takedown was an attempt to shake people out so they could buy. These are all suppositions, and you just never know. Is it coming? Yeah, these markets are going to go nuts. But, in the meantime, it's very tedious.
Let me understand, just for the benefit of myself as well as our viewers, what you just said. Are you saying that a potential or possible early indicator of a cessation of the manipulation that would signify an upcoming run that was going to be permitted to happen by the manipulators might be a increase in the gold and silver mining shares? When you said gold and silver shares, what were you referring to?
Oh, I'm sorry, the mining shares. Yeah, that's number one. And then number two, to have them not aggressively sell on the short side in the futures arena, in the gold and the silver pits. In other words, all of a sudden the market's going up and you're not getting short like they are right now. So those two things would tell us that the game's going to change. And, you look for it and you hope for it, but it hasn't happened yet.
There's a related question from Creation Man. We have a couple of viewers that have submitted the question of this regard. And it has to do with what you're saying about the separation of physical and paper markets. Creation Man asks, people such as Andrew Maguire are stating that the physical market is starting to overtake the paper market, possibly in the next 90 days. When do you believe it will do so in enough quantity to end the manipulation, at least so prices rise to the previous highs of $1,900 gold and $50 silver? That separation of physical demand forcing the end game with separation from paper manipulation.
Well, I call it the tipping point. When the bad guys, this gold cartel, as I call it, we call it, they can't come up with enough physical supply to maintain the price suppression scheme. And all you can do is look for the market to tell you that. I mean, Andrew's got more contacts in London with the physical market, and he's a really sharp guy. So again, that would be the hope trade here. But so far, we're seeing no signs of it. I mean, what it's probably going to happen is it'll come out of nowhere. It'll be when people, are despairing and disgusted and talk like I am right now, and the next thing you know, it's just going to just take off. And you can't predict that.
So the contrarian indicator is when Bill Murphy gets discussed enough. It's a good early warning signal.
Yeah, I was just at a Jeff Berwick conference, and the Bitcoin people were all excited, and the stock market people were all excited, and I said, I'm disgusted, and I was so happy for these other people because we all want to make money and have fun and enjoy life, and I'm enjoying life, but I'm not enjoying talking about the gold and silver markets and watching the same drills over and over again. I want them to end.
Well, Bill, is there any other aspect of your most recent research that you've been doing, new awarenesses or perspectives that you've got that we haven't asked you about that you'd like to share with our viewers?
No, the only other thing was the WikiLeaks document that came out a little while ago, which showed that when the futures market was first set up, it was done to take demand away from the physical market, and it was a State Department utterance out of London or to the State Department, and it was about exactly what GATA's been talking about all these years later, that they used the gold and market to take interest away from gold itself, and specifically by keeping the price down. So the only thing I can say, as I mentioned earlier, I think it's going to be an incredible financial scandal down the road, and that eventually people are going to realize what has been done here. And I can't stress enough how bullish the big picture is. And when this thing gets going, and especially silver, it's going to be breathtaking. And it's going to be very hard for people to get on board based on what's happened all these past years if they're not there now. The legendary Murray Pollitt of Toronto said in the 70s, people were getting tired, a little bit like what I'm talking about. And then, of course, you had the biggest move in history back then. And he said so many people that were veterans in the gold and silver sector got out because they got so tired and they missed the move. And that's what could happen again, where after all these years, it's the momentum people that jump on board once it gets going because they don't mind paying up, versus the other people will be waiting for the pullback that never comes. And I think that's a very important thing to keep in mind as we go through this tedious time of gold and silver, continuing to bottom.
Just wanting to circle back with something you said to make sure that we're all on the same page about it. You mentioned about WikiLeaks, a recent WikiLeaks revelation of what GATA has been claiming all along, that the directives are coming from the executive branch, is it, to divert public interest from gold and silver? And public interest meaning the attention of the common people and potential momentum investors, that the powers that be do not want public sentiment and popular awareness to be that they really should be getting into positioning themselves strategically in physical assets. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. I mean, they we've had futures markets for forever in this country, and the State Department document, shows that it mentions exactly why they wanted to get the gold futures market going for this very reason. And it's really is no surprise, because look at what they did to the gold price and fixing the price and keeping it before things changed. And it's been this way in gold in the United States forever. I mean, even back to when they confiscated it, for crying out loud. So we know what they're doing, and they won't even talk about it in public. One of our fellows, Ware Smith, was had a question of Bill Dudley in Virginia at a presentation about the gold swaps, and he almost lost it on stage. He wouldn't answer the question, and it's that big a deal. And the best part from our camp standpoint is that they are going to reach this tipping point when they run out of enough physical gold and silver to continue what they're doing. So it's not going to go on forever. It's just taking longer than we think because of all the financial innovation they've been able to come up with since 2011. And they've been brilliant at doing it, but it's going to run its course.
When you and that's when the last question I have for you is, when it runs its course, what do you think would be possible examples of reasons the game just couldn't keep going? Because you talked to us about halfway through this interview about how they can make huge profits even the way they're doing it. So it isn't like it's all, if a business wants to drive another business out of business for monopolistic pricing pressure for the long game, they may have to take short-term losses and losses and losses to undercut their own price, sell at a loss in order to drive out their competition and then finally reap the benefits way later. But you're saying that they're even profiting along the way here with the manipulation. So what would ever bring that to an end?
Well, that's a good point, and I can't stress that enough. They've been taking on the speculators and forcing them out. Even in the 12-year bull market, they made money. They kept wiping the specs out, and then it would go up. Then they wipe them out again. It's been, the same drill over and over again. That's what I keep talking about. They've made a fortune, and just think of the fortune they made from the highs in gold and silver in 2011 to where they went to. So they have made an absolute fortune. The question is, will they be forced to get out of this game because of the physical market? That's what I'm talking about. In other words, they reach a tipping point in which the physical market seizes up on them, and they aren't able to do it anymore. And for whatever reason, as I mentioned in silver, in 2011, the open interest didn't go up the entire move. They let it go for whatever their reasons were. Maybe they're getting ready for this bombing campaign that's lasted 6 years. So they know exactly what they're doing. It's extremely sophisticated, but they're going to reach the tipping point when they can't do it anymore, and the game will have to change. At least if they're going to do it again, it'll have to be for much, much higher levels.
Well, Bill, we always appreciate you bringing your perspective and your wisdom and, frankly, your moral courage and conviction here. You're one of the people that's out there, tilting against the windmills of the power centers on behalf of fairness and of right and of proper ethics in the markets. And you're one of our heroes. So just thank you so much again for sharing your insights with us here on Reluctant Preppers. Well,
Dunnigan, I want to thank you and for all you're doing, and a great job. And that's the best thing apart what Chris Powell and I have done in our GATA efforts, that we've met so many great people, and it's made it a pleasure.
Well, knowing that the fruits of your hard labor, because you get a lot of criticism, you get a lot of scoffing, you get direct attacks, and you may get blacklisted where you can't even get an interview on commercial or corporate media. You can't get sometimes interviews with members of Congress or that sort of thing anymore because you're coming out you're on the politically incorrect side of this discussion. But knowing, and you turn around, that you've got thousands and thousands and thousands of individuals, sincere, hardworking, honest individuals that have benefited from the insights and the awareness that you share, has got to make, some gratification, I hope, for all the hard work that you put in.
Oh, it does, and as I said, it's the people we've met and the knowing what's going on and not having gone through life being clueless about something like this. The lack of free press in America, it's just horrible. We fought the communists because they had no free markets, no free press, and they were oppressing people. Well, Bloomberg has told the gold reporter, Claudia Carpenter, she is not allowed to mention GATA. And this is the way it is all over the place, that's just the way it is, and it's the life we have chosen, so we're used to it.
And you will see, no doubt, that there'll be a avalanche of comments on this video. 2/3 of them will be, "Thank goodness for Bill." Part of them will say, Bill always says the same thing, and it's like a stopwatch or whatever. And then other people will say, oh, it's all just it's all just, they'll be denying that there's this manipulation, that sort of thing. But the main response we've seen over and over from our viewers is appreciation for the awareness. And I guess you have to be a little bit sympathetic to people who say, gee, the message never changes. It's like, well, yeah, when you're stuck in that doldrums of that holding pattern that's being engineered, that's been architected for that purpose, that can take a while. And it's difficult for anybody to say exactly when that's going to end. But that doesn't change that this is an opportunity when people can take strategic action to position themselves based on the reality of what's going on. So
I'd like to just finish up by saying that that's part of my whole point. These are artificially low prices. When these things are going to go bonkers, and it's because if you know what GATA knows, you know what's coming, you know what they've done. It's probably the most important thing to understand in the gold silver markets. All these other issues, quite frankly, haven't meant a thing. What major thing has meant anything for gold and silver these past years? Nothing, because of the gold cartel. So the whole key for when it's going to explode is when they blow up. And it's very exciting in that regard. And yeah, it's the same thing over and over again, although hopefully we brought a couple new things to your listeners' attention. But
yeah,
it is what it is.
And that's part of the tagline of our channel is being aware and prepared. So by increasing people's awareness, we're hoping that they can be better informed. And because if we all only had to rely on the information we can get on the corporate media, heaven help us. So we've got to reach out to people that are doing their own independent investigations, as you do at GATA.org. So thank you for the good work you continue to do. We'd love to have you back again. As soon as there's any new insights gained and any new change to these early warning signals that you've talked to us about. So Bill, thanks for coming on, and we'll have you back again.
Thank you, Donegan. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Take care.